Welcome to the Pathways virtual support session of February 10th. This is the last virtual session just before going live for the clubs that I support. I'm TKO Geary, and today we're going to be talking about questions, and it'll be both prior submitted questions and then a couple of questions that have been submitted to Toastmasters International that I thought would be useful for our group. Short demonstration, actually some screenshots, and then if there's any additional questions, we can handle those. Should we go over 30 minutes, we can log out and then come back in again. So let's go to the next screen. Let's do this. So the first question is, what counts as the icebreaker in Pathways? And there has been a couple of discussions about the icebreaker, whether the one in Competent Communicator could be used for Pathways. Well, there was a discussion in this week's Pathways Guide virtual webinar that went over that. And in the past, I had heard that the icebreaker in Competent Communicator could be used. However, in this week's webinar, Toastmasters International says that the only icebreaker that can be counted in Pathways is the Pathways icebreaker. So you can go ahead and access that right now before Pathways switch is flipped by going to the toastmasters.org website and then clicking on Pathways. If you scroll down about halfway down, maybe a little bit farther, on that particular web page, you will see the icebreaker speech. So you can go ahead and get a taste for what that is like now, and then go ahead and use that when you start your first path. The next question is Pathways custom software? And no, it's not. Toastmasters International has recognized that there is a lot of value in going with an organization that has already created a platform and the software and everything necessary to go ahead and make that work for a learning platform. So they contracted with a third-party company who has learning software systems, and then that platform was tailored to abide by the Toastmasters culture, most of the nomenclature, and then how Pathways would operate. Some of the users are finding two areas where it doesn't quite have that feel for a Toastmasters piece of software. And that's one where it talks about the Basecamp manager role, and it has directions if you want to return to the employee. Well, ideally that would say member in the Toastmasters world. However, in this particular situation, that is hard-coded into that third-party software. So you might see one or two places where there is some, well, that just doesn't quite sound like Toastmasters. So just be advised that this is not a Toastmasters developed piece of software. We're using another platform that has a lot of testing, is very robust, and from what I've seen so far, it looks like it's going to handle it very nicely. So just be advised there might be a couple of, like, that doesn't make sense, or that doesn't seem just quite right. And you'll see that. Not very much, just one or two places that I know of. The next question, if a member is reinstated, do they get their first path for free? So after launch, any reinstated, second question is, after launch, can a reinstated member continue in the traditional program during transition? So these are two questions that are related. Any member that gets reinstated, and that means they were in the traditional program and they were reinstated after Pathways goes live, does get to have their first path for free. That is no problem at all. And then if a member is reinstated and say they wanted to complete, an Advanced Communicator Gold or something, can they do that? Absolutely. So if somebody wants to rejoin after the 13th of February and they want to continue where they were when they had taken a hiatus, then they are more than welcome to work in that traditional program. They also will be under the umbrella of that 2-year transition period. So you just want to be advised that if somebody does come in, they do want to work in the traditional program, comes back in, and they want to work in the traditional program, then they would need to make sure that they can complete that within that transition period by 2020. How did the officer positions change, specifically the Vice President of Education? Are there tutorials available for the Vice President of Education and the Basecamp manager? So here's what's interesting, is this question had been submitted to the Toastmasters International group, and we talked about it in our Pathways webinar, is the Vice President of Education, their role really isn't changing on what they do. What is changing is how they do what they've done. So in the past, the Vice President of Education would get a form and they'd have to sign it or sign off on the speeches, and then either take a picture of it and attach it to an email or fax it or something like that. So what happens now with Pathways is they are all button clicks. So you just, instead of taking a picture, you can click on a button that's something that says, yes, I concur, this level is completed. And it's that what unlocks the opportunity for that member to go forward where there are items that need to be unlocked. So just be advised that the change is how, not the what. And also I'm told that the tutorials that are available for the Vice President of Education and the Basecamp Manager are good enough for people to understand what it is that they need to do in those roles. So when we go live, you can go ahead and take a look at those tutorials and just see how to do the job that you've been doing before in paper can be done electronically. The next question is can I enter a new member up through midnight of February 12th? No, the Toastmasters International group is going to work with a third-party vendor to get Regions 3 and Regions 5 and District 23 is in Region 3 to get our regions ready to go when they flip the switch on February 13th. So if you go onto the Toastmasters website, you will see a message that says, attention, Region 3 and Region 5 club and district leaders. Between 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which means 8 o'clock Mountain Time, and 9 o'clock in Central Time, on February 12th, so between that hour and then 6 a.m. Pacific Time, which is 7 or 8 Mountain or Central, on February 13th, you will not be able to submit new members, submit payments, place district orders, or make purchases in the online store. We apologize for any inconvenience and thank you for your patience. So just know that if you're really wanting to submit a new member before the switch is flipped for Pathways, please get that done prior to 8 p.m. Mountain Time or 9 p.m. Central Time on February 12th. And that way that you can make sure you've got that person in. Otherwise, you need to wait until Pathways goes live sometime during the day on February 13th. And then what emails are needed? This is a reminder that you need to make sure each member needs to make sure that on their profile in the Toastmasters website that they have an email that's listed, that they do check the email that is listed, and that the email is spelled correctly. If any member has not received that pre-launch email, then something's not working right with that email entry, and then they would need to check that out. To get to that, you need to make sure that you log on to the Toastmasters website. So everybody needs to make sure that that login occurs. that login works. And then the third topic regarding this to think about is what is the email address that Basecamp managers can have access to? And the specific reason for this is, if you recall, the Basecamp manager consists of the Vice President of Education doing Vice President of Education duties. And then there's also two other roles that can have access to Basecamp manager, and that's the club president and the club secretary. And the reason that there's more than just the Vice President of Education is if for any reason the Vice President of Education is out on travel, whatever, can't get to the computer, then you don't have to wait. You can have the president or the secretary move along the correspondence. Or in the case of the Vice President of Education achieving one of those levels, then there's someone else who can submit that information for them. So just to be advised, this information came off of the Toastmasters Master Q&A document, which is almost about 1,000 questions since launch. So because more than one club officer has access to verify education on Basecamp, all Basecamp manager emails will go to the email address on file for the club in Club Central. I'll show you where that's located in a moment. Should the Vice President of Education not be able to access Basecamp or verify education, the Toastmasters International wants to ensure these notifications are seen by another club officer who can respond, in this case, the president and the secretary. So Toastmasters recommends setting up a club email address that can be accessed by all club officers should the club not have this in place already. So again, whoever is listed in Club Central, you want to make sure that that person, that email can be accessible by the 3 officers, president, secretary, and vice president of education. Some clubs are saying just create an email that can be accessed by all club officers, even though only the 3 of them will be able to verify paths and move members along. The other members can go ahead and have this just be a generic club use. So you might use it on, say, Free Toast Host, or Easy Speak, I think, has an option for some emails, but you want to check with those. You can create an email in Gmail so that would work, and see how that is going to work for your club. So work with whatever's best for your club. So here's where you want to double check whatever, and your Find a Club. If say you go to this particular club, whatever is listed on Email This Club is what is listed in Club Central. That is the email that is going to receive the Basecamp Manager communication. So you want to make sure that whatever email address is listed there can get access by the president, vice president of education, and the secretary. And then also, just as a reminder, if you haven't filled in a Facebook link, go ahead and do that. It really helps in some cases. So if you go to Club Central, down here, there is club contact and meeting information. So you can review and update the club contact information, meeting schedule, and location. And as I've been told, this is the email that is going to be pulled on that correspondence with the club officers. So just if you click on Club Contact and Meeting Information, you will get to Club Contact and Meeting Information. Here you can insert the email where the club officers can get that. Just keep in mind, if you have one email in there of a person, a single individual person's email, that is the email that will receive Basecamp Manager communication. All right? And then, of course, if you have your Facebook page, go ahead and enter that there. What will happen on the launch date on February 13th is all emails on file with Toastmasters International in the profiles, everybody in their email listed will receive a Pathways launch email. So you'll be able to go right from the beginning of the Pathways email, begin now, and that'll take you into your assessment and information like the tiles down here. So you would click on taking your assessment. This also has a couple of other resources. How do I enroll? This is a little bit of an article that will help you with your learning experience start. And then what can I learn? This is a video that's available for people to watch. And then just as it says here, it says go to the Pathway Start page, log on, choose your path, and disable your pop-up blockers. So we mentioned this in an earlier virtual session, is you want to make sure your pop-up blockers are disabled, because that's the way the learning material comes up through your browser for you to see it. Some clubs and members have suggested that if you're worried about disabling pop-up blockers, and keep in mind, when you do, it is only for the Toastmasters website if you disable pop-up blockers for the website. If you don't, you might get into other parts of your browser. So you just want to make sure you disable pop-up blockers. And if you have, say, Chrome is what you use for your internet activity, and you use Internet Explorer for Toastmasters activity, even though you're just disabling the Toastmasters website from pop-up blockers, that will make sure, if you want to feel comfortable, that there's no chance anything else will be disabled. So this is the email that will come. Toastmasters is coming. We're launching. When you get to this first screen, this is where you get to choose your path. That's the assessment, where you go through, you answer some questions, and then based on what you said you wanted to do, Toastmasters International's module will suggest 3 paths. These paths will help you with the path that you've chosen. And if for any reason that you don't like those, you can still go and pick from one of the other paths. But this is just that first, hey, based on what you said, here's what will work best for you. And then that goes back to then you being able to access the next part, which is your icebreaker and the rest of the curriculum. So you'll start down your path, and you'll have that path identified once you select it. Something else is the navigator will be accessible to you in electronic form. That was handed out in hard copy during the visits, the Pathways visits to Club. clubs, so you will be able to look at it via online access. And the Navigator is just packed full of information. So this is our session for today, and I do not see any questions. So this will be the main part of our conversation today. Again, this is the last session that we're going to have prior to going live. We are looking at having a session on Thursday night. So look for those opportunities, and if you have any questions at all, go ahead and submit them to me. My email address is on the to line from the email you received from me. And then just always can't reinforce enough that whatever email is on the club contact and meeting information, that will be the email that is used for Basecamp Manager. So I'm excited about Pathways going live. I hope you are too. If you have any questions or comments, please send them to me, and I will answer them to either by researching the Master Q&A log or talking to Toastmasters on the next webinar. Thank you so much, and good luck. We'll see you on the Pathways side.